Good day once again to all our viewers and our listeners. Welcome once again to our command center right here at GIS NTN. And of course, this is our COVID-19 response, where we bring you all the official updates where Saint Lucia's response is concerned with regards to COVID-19. Well, we have quite a bit to report before we get into our special guest in studio with us. Today, earlier on today, 120 Cuban doctors and nurses were welcomed by the Minister of Health, along with the Cuban ambassador, fellow ministers, as well as the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sharon Belmar George. And we have here an official press statement from the Office of the Prime Minister. And it reads as follows. Prime Minister Honorable Alan Chasney has expressed immense thanks to the government and people of Cuba as 113 Cuban medical professionals arrived in Saint Lucia to lend support to Saint Lucia's ongoing efforts to strengthen the health system amid the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that every country in the world is facing their own challenges at this time, including Cuba, and we are so very thankful for this immense show of brotherhood from this long-standing friend of Saint Lucia, said PM Chasney. On behalf of the government and people of Saint Lucia, we thank the Cuban president and Cuba's ambassador to our island. This is a true show of unity and caring, and we are proud that Cuba has been among the nations leading the charge to find treatment for COVID-19 and helping hard-hit countries such as Italy. The Prime Minister thanked the Embassy of the Republic of Cuba, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Ministry of Tourism, Saint Lucia Tourism Authority, the Saint Lucia Cuba Association, the Saint Lucia Air and Seaports Authority, the External Affairs Ministry, Bahamas Air, Sandals Resort, and all those who assisted in ensuring this came to fruition. There are many people working behind the scenes to have made this happen in a short space of time, and we are grateful for their hard work, noted Prime Minister Chasney. And I'd also like to read, because some persons have been on social media questioning the purpose of having so many Cuban doctors and nurses here at this time. And I would just like to read a message from Dr. Merle Clark, who is the president of the Saint Lucia Medical and Dental Association. And it reads, the fact that we are questioning the need for so many Cuban healthcare providers, given that we only have 3 confirmed cases, would indicate that we don't truly understand the scope and gravity of what we are potentially facing. It means that the ministry, we the healthcare workers, have obviously not succeeded in our quest to inform and educate Saint Lucia. We are gearing up for war. War against an invisible enemy, no less. We need all hands on deck. Every able-bodied citizen who is able to contribute to the fight must be engaged. We need a fail-safe strategy and manpower. We need an army which is ready, well-rested, and fully equipped. It is often said that the best defense is an offense. If ever there was a time to overreact with our offense, it is now. Please, don't feel that we have the all clear to do as we please and go walking about and engaging. Please don't have a false sense of security. We are testing, but certainly not widely enough. We have no evidence of in-country transmission, but we want you to act as if we do and stay at home. Wash your hands, practice social distancing. Nobody is trying to hide information from you or to deceive or obfuscate. We healthcare providers would certainly not be party to any such effort. Our mission and oath is to protect our fellow man. Can better be done? Absolutely. And we must demand it. These are unprecedented times and events. We must demand the best from those tasked with protecting us. But we all need to do our part for our country. We can't get through this, but we must do this together. And in essence, this has been the message all week long from all our officials, all our practitioners, that this is a fight that we must be all in. And this is not to be taken lightly. For example, today we noticed that there was increased activity around town. And I think it was because, in light of the fact that the banks disclosed that they would be remaining closed next week from Monday, March 30th to Friday, April 3rd. So you saw several persons, possibly monthly paid workers, weekly paid workers, fortnightly paid workers, who would have gotten paid possibly today and yesterday, making their way to the banks and also making their way to the supermarket. But we remind St. Lucians that all safety measures, all social distancing practices are still in effect, despite the fact that the CMO have said that we've had 3 cases, 3 persons have tested positive, and 2 of the persons have returned overseas, and 1 person is in isolation on island. But testing continues, and we still have persons in isolation, and we still have persons in quarantine. So St. Lucia, this is no time to let down your guard. Be prepared, practice the social distancing, and remain at home as much as possible. Quickly, before we take our very first break, and it pertains to Saint Lucia Carnival. Many persons have been inquiring. Take full account of the so Saint Lucia Carnival rolls over to 2021. So the official press release that there will be no carnival this year. So after all the stakeholders met, and some of the things that they discussed, they looked at the international travel restrictions, competing regional events, reduced disposable income of patrons, the availability of government funding for Carnival 2020, availability of sponsorship support, preservation of brand and product standing, Carnival stakeholders' responsibility. In keeping with these decisions, Saint Lucia Carnival Bands Association has agreed that its members will present the 2020 portrayal in 2021 and indicated that prepaid purchases, deposits, and other similar payments will be honored. Individual stakeholders are expected to communicate directly with patrons and revelers regarding the rollover to 2021. Consistent with this decision, the government of St. Lucia will continue to monitor the global and domestic situation with a view to staging alternate events later in 2020, which might create economic opportunities for affected carnival producers. Meanwhile, the government urges all carnival stakeholders to take full advantage of the extended lead time in anticipation of an enhanced St. Lucia Carnival experience in 2021. The government thanks all our various carnival organizations, bands, and creative industry persons who have used their platforms to assist in sharing information on COVID-19 to the public. So there you have it, folks. There'll be no carnival this year, 2020, and the next carnival, hopefully when all this blows over, will be in 2021. We are due for our very first break, and when we return, we'll introduce our guest in studio here with us.
Wash your hands. Wash them right.
With soap and lots of water. Get between fingers. Get under the nails. Go above the wrists. Do this for no less than 15 seconds. Rinse properly. Dry with a clean towel. If there is no water, do the same washing motions with an alcohol-based hand sanitizer containing at least 70% alcohol.
Wash your hands. Wash them right.
This message brought to you courtesy the Bureau of Health Education of the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
And welcome back to the studios of GIS NTN, our command center relaying all the relevant information with regards to St. Lucia's COVID-19 response. We're joined in studio with members of the National Youth Council. We have with us Edison Lane, who is the Public Relations Officer of the NYC, as well as Jeanne Lebon, who is the second Vice President of the NYC. And let me just say, despite the times that we are going through, let me just wish you belated happy birthday. Yesterday is your birthday.
Yes.
I know COVID-19 have sort of downplayed, your celebration. But hopefully when all this is over, we'll enjoy some cake and some drinks, right?
Yes, definitely. Looking forward to that. Sure.
Okay, so what has been the NYC, let me just put it to Edison first. What has been the NYC's response? What have been some of the things that have been taking place behind the scenes with regards to COVID-19?
Okay, so the COVID-19 situation came out in an unprecedented manner. And the Saint Lucia National Youth Council, of course, we had to be most agile to grab onto the information that was at hand. And the first thing that we did was that we actually sat through the stakeholder meetings, the NEMAC meetings, and we first got informed, because I think that is just the most sensible step. And through our involvement, we were able to come out on the Thursday to give our own take, or to provide the NYC's stance on the COVID-19 situation. And that was in the form of a press briefing, which was held virtually. Well, rather it was directly sent to the media houses as opposed to the traditional style.
Okay.
And from there we were able to disseminate our own information, and of course to share with the youth of Saint Lucia what we have been in contact with, the information that we have, and also to encourage them during the early stages to take the necessary precautions. But apart from this, behind the scenes, the Saint Lucia National Youth Council has been in discussion, of course in particular in terms of our mandate, our programs, all of which would have been, subjected to the time that we're in now, and we would have to begin to reanalyze. But besides that, we decided to go on to a social media campaign to begin the process of sensitizing young people, because we really play an important role in shifting the perspective. We are whopping 60% of the population, and we still need to come forward with the same eagerness, with the same readiness for the situation, and to aid in helping everybody else and our entire society as a whole in moving forward. So the Saint Lucia National Youth Council has been active.
What have been some of your major concerns as far as this pandemic is?
Okay, so really, we're looking at the response of young people. And, to start the process at what response do we want would definitely be a good point to go to and work backwards. Definitely, we want young people to react, to take the necessary precaution. We don't want to instill fear, but certainly there must be a sense of urgency that now we must prepare, we must make sure and ensure that we can operate during the times when things may not be as free and as liberated as usual. So we definitely think that the concern is with young people reacting, also with sharing positive, or rather factual information, because young people can do a great job at circulating information. In fact, we all do. But when we circulate the right information and we begin to create small incubators for that information to flourish, we go in and we use our similar WhatsApp groups and those things to disseminate positive information, or rather legitimate information, we can definitely see something going forward or coming from that.
Give me your take as far as instilling in young persons that they are not to let their guards down, despite all the evidence suggesting that the high-risk group where COVID-19 is concerned are the elderly and persons with underlying medical conditions, that they are still at risk. How do you shape that message to get that through to them?
Well, I don't think we need to go reinventing the wheel. At this point, every country is at a different stage in their response to COVID-19. We look at countries like Italy, where young people have begun to get infected and get sick from this disease. Now, although it may not be the most fatal, some of them have died, but it may not be the most fatal in their age group, we still have a need for precaution, because when it comes down to being your brother's keeper and protecting our community as a whole, everybody must play a part. And young people cannot negate the fact that we have parents, we have grandparents, we have neighbors and so on, and we can still be vectors. So that should be ever more important for us to protect the people that we're around, protect our nation really, and play the part that we're supposed to play, and be definitely the incubators for the right information, because we have the first world models, we have the larger countries to look at how they deal with it, and we can still continue to ask the questions which may be pressing to us now.
But besides just the possibility of contracting the virus, Ojani, there are also several implications for us as a country, and specific to young persons, that they, despite the fact that they may not become infected, that they will be affected by this COVID-19. Your response to this?
Well, I think in that sense, it's important for the National Youth Council to then be a driver for positive change in this circumstance. So there's a lot of information going around with regard to the impact of COVID-19 on the Caribbean and the international community. But I think within our local context, the NYC must be able to influence young people into making some of the positive decisions in a more collective approach. So when I say collective approach, I'm meaning something where we're able to make hashtags like stay at home or hashtags like social distancing, etc., to be able to drive a very cool campaign to encourage young people to see the importance in being able to look out for each other. So it's a local context that we need to think a bit more from our end. I'm also looking at the theme for this year's Independence. Now is the time, let's do this together. And I'm realizing that, following within a month from our independence anniversary, we're now faced with a situation which really requires the equal effort and contribution from each part of society. So I think for us, from our end, it's about making that step to begin to look at how youth understand the implications and then feeding the information necessary, like Edison said, to keep them informed. Okay, well said. We're due for our second break now. When we come back, we'll take a look at the impact this is having specifically to students. All students are now at home, and other aspects as with regards to young persons in Saint Lucia.
Wash them before
Eating or handling food or caring for infants, sick or elderly people.
wash your hands. Wash them after.
Using the toilet, touching raw meat, handling pets and livestock, playing outdoors, cleaning or handling waste and garbage.
Wash your hands. Wash them often.
You are going right when you make a habit of washing your hands several times a day.
This message brought to you courtesy the Bureau of Health Education of the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Welcome back to the studios of GIS NTN, and we're present with us. We have Edison Lane, who is the Public Relations Officer of the National Youth Council, and Ajani Lebon, who is the second Vice President of the all-important NYC. Definitely you guys are not out of the loop where our response to COVID-19 is concerned. And I mentioned before we went to the break that there's much concern about students being at home at this time. Loss of tuition time. You have CXC examinations coming up on what have you. Share your thoughts on this.
COVID-19 has really hit the NYC in a place where we've been pushed to re-strategize. And I think a lot of the reason being we were actually set to commemorate our 45th year of establishment this year. And we planned on being able to roll out programs which would have been able to impact youth within the school environment and in the community. But now, given the current situation where most youth are without the in-classroom instruction time, we now have to think about how can these youth be reached in that time frame. So it's an unfortunate situation that many of all our schools are closed at this point. And I think we've been in discussion among ourselves as to how can we seek to reach these youth in particular areas. So I'm glad that we've been able to establish some clear communication channels between the NYC and the Ministry of Education through the Chief Education Officer. And she's been making every effort to ensure that the NYC is part and parcel of all developments with regard to education. At this time, after the chief, we've been able to discuss the provision of data plans for students who are not, who do not have a steady access to internet connection.
Right.
And we've been looking at other ways where we could form those partnerships, but I'm glad that Digicel was able to come on board. And we've since, by I think it was by 3 p.m. today, we're able to send across a few names to receive that assistance. But that's just a very, that's a drop in the barrel. Mm-hmm. So what we want to begin to continue discussing with the ministry is the implementation of zero rating platforms. So zero-rated websites are websites which could be made available to a given geographic region if the authority or take for instance in this place government works with the internet service providers to be able to allow access to these youth free of charge.
Okay.
I think this will be a very critical decision that needs to be made at this given point. You have many students who are not in school and they're not even able to have the access for them to be able to respond to, certain information. So I remember on this platform, Dr. Kifner speaking about what they're doing to provide the MiFi devices to the students.
Yes.
And my question was, for the students who that poll was run with, they would have already had access, but there's still a great percentage of youth out there who do not even have a device to be able to answer to these polls, etc. So the discussion is ongoing with the ministry. We're also glad to say that many of our international students have returned home, and I think we're glad as a youth council to see our youth together within the island so that we can be better able to respond to them. We also want to continue to make ourselves available for youth who are in the diaspora, who need the assistance of the NYC or who need the assistance of the local government. So we want to continue to make that plea to youth. We also want to mention that this opportunity has been one which has placed us into a situation where we now have to begin to think about years to come, because this will not be the last pandemic. This will not be the last situation where we need to look at closing down the country for specific purposes. So it's the opportune time to bring in stakeholders to now charter a course to devise a national protocol, a national plan in times of crisis, not just weather systems, but national disasters which require us to begin to look at how can we reach students who are not in school through other platforms as well.
Okay. We've also been talking about the economic impact that obviously COVID-19 will have, particularly on our youth. Over the last few years, there have been dents made in the youth unemployment. But now with COVID-19 and the whole global pandemic, whatever strides have been made, this will definitely be impacted. What are your views on the economic impact with regards to young persons, particularly in Saint Lucia, Edison?
All right, so right now, we could definitely say for sure that non-essential businesses have closed down. Hotels have closed down. The manufacturing industry is of course going to take a hit right now, especially due to the heightened sanitization aspect where everybody is concerned. And definitely those people who have been laid off, who have been sent home, who are perhaps not on their regular pay schedule, are going to see an immediate effect on the economic situation. And that's a fact for young people who are within the hotel industry. And that's definitely, one of the industries we've put a lot of money into. We've invested a lot of human resources, and given that they have so much land, there's so many hotels on island which currently employ young people. We can definitely expect them to be affected. Apart from that, we're looking at the fact that there's just a general drawback in the economy. The spending power is less, and certainly young people are affected within all of the industries personally, and still within sustenance, some young people are going to be disadvantaged at this point due to the economic drawback. And we definitely need to look towards, our own sustenance in the sense of care packages. And we've seen some stimulus packages coming on different islands where, their local government have been able to come together to provide a stimulus for the economy. Again, we're still curious, and we still ask, will that be done here in Saint Lucia? Now, apart from this, there's been a global trend, especially in the US, where it comes to equipment, masks. Things of this nature have been running out. The people have been buying it out at a rate where the medical staff, some of them are still unable to. They're nearing a point where they may not be able to have enough equipment, and that's due to preparation. So, certainly we must look at it on the front where all of the equipment that we need to get it now, and we need to still keep in mind the idea that these things may run out, and the alternatives we need to look towards need to be explored now in the earlier stages. So on the economic end, things like sewing masks, homemade masks, these things will become more important, because as we look regionally, Cuba has already made it mandatory for all the citizens leaving their house to wear masks. And it's not something that we should expect that will not happen to us.
Okay.
And that may be one of the biggest traps, really, to look at the bigger picture and still think that it won't happen to us.
Okay.
So we observe the stages, and these are things that are certainly alarming when people in the US need to be donating their stocks of masks to the medical sector. So here we need to begin to think about it and certainly consider the fact that we may have to sew masks, we may have to use certain materials and begin to innovate to move forward. Yeah.
Let me just pick up, you made a point earlier on about the stimulus package. From my understanding, there is one being put in place and all sectors will be taken into consideration, so that should be announced in the coming week or so. But also on the point of the mask, it is said that in every crisis, there are opportunities. With regards to the young persons and as youth advocates, what are you guys saying to the young persons out there, to your membership and just generally to young persons, as to what opportunities they may be able to take advantage of even in spite of this crisis? We talk about food security, we talk about the mask and other activities that they could engage in, but maybe there are some other ideas that you could engage your membership and other young persons to take advantage and see the opportunities coming out of all of this.
Well, that's certainly an important point to make, because in every time of crisis, there are some who will act and who will gain the tremendous benefit going forward. I think the mask is definitely an important point, because people will essentially need to prepare to build masks on their own. It doesn't mean that these things are going to be sold. I don't necessarily see this as an important point for startup. Although young people within startups are going to face tremendous struggle right now because of the way that the economy is. So that's going to be an important point. But for young people to be industrious and to be innovative and to actually look towards protecting their community, protecting the elderly around them and their family around them. So I would most highly urge young people to be proactive, to find out legitimate information and to share it, to take the precautions, and don't just look at it as a fad, because essentially this is the crisis moment that this is the war that we've not been expecting. So essentially we need to take up a similar mindset. We need to be industrious, not just for profit, but in a way that can benefit the society. And I think young people can do an excellent job, and not just creating masks and such, but actually being the pillars of that healthcare system we want to see distributed or disseminated throughout the island.
Most definitely. We're down to our final minute, so just your final thoughts, Ajani?
Yes, well, I'm looking at the COVID-19 situation and I've spoken to the colleagues about it. It's really presented us with an opportunity to now go back to the drawing board as an organization, as individuals, to now think about the way forward. I was looking at the general scheme, and I'm saying that at the start of a decade, it's not much of a better time to do it than at this point, where we can now meet as individuals, as stakeholders, and now begin to charter a plan that could inform our response to crisis, that could assist our response to education and other key sectors. I want to make a personal plea to the youth of Saint Lucia right now to begin to be a bit more familiar with the information channels that has been established by the government. I'm really pleased by what has been going on throughout the studio on a daily basis, and I think it's really key that we seek to stay informed and we seek to stay educated. I really also want to encourage the youth to take the social distancing very, very seriously. Find a space within your household where you feel comfortable, where you could read a book, where you could spend time planning and assisting people around you who could really, assist you in putting yourself forward in the next few months as this crisis develops. But then again, I think we as a country are really making some critical strides, and looking at what's happening across the region, I definitely think that the CMO and her team have been doing a fantastic job in that regard.
Final thoughts, Edison?
Well, I would definitely want to urge the young people of Saint Lucia to use this time to really go into self-development, to use the channels available. Of course, on the education portion, we have Audible, we have so much through the social channels that we can dig out and gain information and make meaningful changes to who we are now. So we could definitely use this time to use those channels, use the free meditation apps, and maybe try something of that sort to basically get down to finding out where our true passion lies and to making this a point for development, to springboard greater things.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well said. And to have a safe weekend, let's continue to practice social distancing, and let's continue to spread the positive message and the correct information through all our various platforms. Thank you for those of you viewing us and those of you listening to us, joining us here at our command center at GIS NTN, where we'll continue to provide you on a daily basis with all of the updates with regards to COVID-19. Thank you once again, and stay safe.